Assalamualaikum and hello. My name is NURSHAZATUL Shazwana binti Azhar and my metric number is 270189. Today, I would like to present about the topic prejudice and racism and their role in creating social hostility. First of all, what is prejudice and racism? Prejudice is an unjustified or incorrect attitude it is usually known as a negative attitude of one person towards other individual based solely on the individual's membership of a social group. There is 7 types of prejudice, which is sexuality, gender, race, ethnicity, disability, religion, and age. Racism is a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial difference produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. There are many types of racism, which is individual or interpersonal racism, systemic racism, racial profiling, historical racism, cultural racism, colorism, and color avoidance racism. Individual or interpersonal racism refers to prejudice and discrimination executed by individuals consciously and unconsciously that occurs between individuals. For example, telling a racist joke and believing in the superiority of white people. Historical racism is economic inequality or social disparity caused by past racism. For example, African Americans have had their opportunities in wealth, education, and employment adversely affected due to the mistreatment of their ancestors during the slavery and post-slavery periods. For another situation, in year 2014, United States was faced a racial tensions as well as the overlap between prejudice. Young unarmed black man Michael Brown was slain by Darren Wilson, a white police officer, on that particular day. Wilson instructed Brown and his companion to avoid walking in the street during the event and instead stay on the sidewalk. While eyewitness stories differ, they all concur that Wilson and Brown got into a fight. Wilson claims that he shot Brown many times in self-defense when Brown attacked him, while Dorian Johnson, another Brown friend who was there at the moment, contended that Brown first fled before turning and waving his hands in the air in surrender. The findings of 3 separate autopsies revealed Brown had been shot 6 times. For the prejudice and racism issues, they are using a Gary S. Baker 1971 theory. Baker describes a classic theory about how is aversion to interracial contact that referred to as a test for discrimination. The predictions from Baker's seminal work on employer prejudice from 1957 and discovered that relative black wage which is very negatively with the prejudice of the marginal white in a state. Secondly, very negatively with the prejudice in the lower tail of the prejudice distribution, but are unaffected by the prejudice of the most prejudiced person in a state, and very negatively with the percentage of a state that is black. According to researcher estimations, prejudice accounts for 1/4 of the racial pay disparity, with serious financial effects for black lifetime earnings. Therapists are not exempt from prejudice. In fact, few institutions provide the therapists with instruction on how racism, sexism, and other types of bias and discrimination might be addressed in the therapy. Prejudice can injure clients and compromise the therapeutic process. Examples of how bias might negatively impact therapy include altering perceptions, minimizing experience, not recognizing power dynamics, and gaslighting. For altering perceptions, prejudicial attitudes held by a therapist about a group may color their assessment of their patients. For instance, a therapist who believes that women tend to exaggerate things may not take a woman's allegations of sexual assault seriously. Next, minimizing experience is the capacity of a therapist to help might be hampered by their prejudice views about how prejudice and discrimination affect people. A therapist can be uninformed of how high-profile sexual assault cases affect sexual abuse survivors or undervalue the impact that police shootings of unarmed black individuals have on black mental health. In addition, a therapist who has prejudiced attitudes or is ignorant of the impact of bias may fail to identify power dynamics when they arise in treatment. A white therapist who instead could not comprehend a black patient's reluctance to bring up racism. A biased therapist in family therapy could miss the power difference between male and female love partners. Lastly is gaslighting by challenging a client's experience or realities. A therapist who is unaware of the negative impact of prejudice or who is unaware of their own preconceptions may unintentionally gaslight them. For prejudice and racism issues, the researcher used laboratory experiments to measure avoidance by assessing people's willingness to volunteer time together with an outgroup individual in a given setting. Next, they are also using sociological studies that have measured avoidance in discretionary social context situations by report or observation. They are also have a different type of survey question that was used to measure prejudice, which is in year 2009 British Social Attitudes Survey (BSAS), in year 2008 European Social Survey (ESS), in year 2005 National Survey of Prejudice (NSP), in year 2004 and 2006 Age Concern England (ACE), in year 2007 Eurobarometer (EB), and year 2003 Stonewall Survey. Conclusion: good relations and prejudice are not mutually exclusive. Good relationship will not necessarily be impacted by strategies to combat prejudice, and vice versa. As intergroup circumstance and connection evolve, prejudice in particular arise and dissipates. In order to combat bias, a thorough investigation of the intergroup environment must be conducted first. It is helpful to break down prejudice into its many parts. These include the foundations of bias in people's value system, method of social classifications, and their identities based on group membership. Prejudice may also appear in a variety of forms, and it is important to distinguish between various stereotypes, emotions, overt and more covert or indirect prejudice, as well as prejudice that manifests via actions, language, visual, and nonverbal cues. In addition, there are various ways that people interact with prejudice, which is by being the object of prejudice from others, by interacting with individuals from potentially unfavorable or untrustworthy groups, and by exercising self or motivated restraints on prejudice, attitudes, and behaviors. Racial prejudice and racism should be reduced because the issue will impede or prevent individuals, the object of racism, from them achieving their full potential as a human being. Racial prejudice and racism also will impede or prevent individuals, the object of racism, from making their fullest contribution to society.